Hi, this is Ken Gosnell with CEO Experience, and today at our CEO conversation, I'm delighted to welcome Jeff Buckman. Jeff is the owner of Buckmans Inc. and the author of Making Your Business God's Business. Jeff has been in business now for many years and has run a successful business up in the Philadelphia area. So, Jeff, welcome to the program. Glad to have you with me today.
Well, glad to be here. Glad to share.
Hey, Jeff, I love the title of your book, Making Your Business God's Business. It's a delightful little read, and I think something that every Christian business owner should read, really, any business owner that wants to hear a great business story should read. Can you tell me a little bit about why you wrote the book and how the book came to being?
Sure, sure. The whole idea of me writing a book was so foreign to my DNA, but I was encouraged to write the book from one of our pastors at our local church, and also from an evangelist that would come through. Got to be friends with him and his family, but he'd come through maybe every year, and he would say, "Buckman, have you written a book yet? Somebody needs to get you to write a book." And then we were on a ski trip with some missionary friends of ours. We like to once or twice a year get away with missionaries, and we kind of treat them to a ski trip. And towards the end of that trip, last night, it got real serious, and they just said, "You need to write a book and let other Christian business people know what you do." So through those encouragements, that's what pushed me to write the book.
Well, I'm glad they did because it really was an inspirational read. And I was just so motivated by your authenticity and by your story. You've had quite a history in business, and you talk about how you took over the business and really have had a significant growth through the years, but it hasn't always been easy. You made some very tough decisions and you had some real pivotal moments. Can you tell us a little bit about the Buckman story?
Sure, sure. My dad started the business years ago, and the family business when I was a kid was plumbing and heating, commercial contracting. And then my brother and I started to ski, and my dad didn't want to pay retail. He joked about it. He didn't want to pay retail for ski equipment, so he started a small ski shop. And he also put a swimming pool in our backyard, an in-ground pool. This was back in I'm going to guess the late 60s, and had trouble finding a place to buy chemicals. So he started a small side business of retail pool chemicals, and that led to ski and snowboard equipment in that space in the wintertime. And then when I got out of high school, I just went and ran that part of the business for him, and God just blessed, and that side of the business grew exponentially from there.
Yeah, I love the organic growth that you experienced, and it was just really one decision at a time, as you illustrated it, from going to chemicals to buying a piece of property and then continuing to expand all along the East Coast. Can you tell us a little bit about what Buckman's is today and what
Sure.
you're?
Yeah. Yeah. So as the Lord led, we would add one ski shop after another, and it would seem that ski shops would be going out of business, and they'd come to us and say, "Hey, would you help us out?" And we ended up getting. We now have 9 stores, but one store was led after another by folks coming to us and saying, "I need to move because we're going through a divorce," or I'm going to go bankrupt. It was a warm winter. I need to sell. So we would get their businesses for really nothing for the business side. We'd buy their inventory at a 10 or 15% discount off of wholesale. But for that, we'd get their mailing list, their store fixtures, their phone list, all their contacts of the customers. And we just would take over their ski shop. So that's on the ski side. And then pool chemical side, we quickly got out of retail pool chemicals and started supplying wholesale chemicals that other suppliers didn't want to supply, kind of things that were heavy or messy, but needed. And then the Lord brought one acquisition after another, where somebody would be selling that part of their chemical business or again going out of business, and we would negotiate the customer list. So today, when I think back in maybe the middle 70s when it was myself and one part-timer, and now in the summertime, there's 190 or 200 of us. And in the wintertime, with a lot of part-time folks working 15, 20 hours a week, there's about 450 to 470 of us. So the business has grown over the years. Middle 70s, the sales were about $48,000 a year, and this year we'll do somewhere in the 85 million in sales. So it's all God doing it. I kind of refer to him as our sales manager.
Right, I love that. We'll talk a little bit about making God your sales manager, but I love this story just because it's been a systematic approach year after year, looking at different opportunities. But as you were talking about those acquisitions, one of the things in the book that you really highlight was that you really believe some of these opportunities were from God, but you had clear boundaries on what kind of
Right.
deals you could make because you believe that was good stewardship. Can you
Yeah,
tell us? I call it knowing your yeses and nos. Jesus said, "Let our yes be yes and our no be no." And sometimes, we have a tendency to say, "Well, I really want this," or "I really think this would be good." And so, even though God may give us a clear boundary, we kind of blur the lines a little bit because of what we want. But you really, what I've read, you stuck pretty close to here was a model that God provided, and you would only go after those deals that fit into that
that's right.
framework.
That's right. Yeah, on the ski side, people don't line up to buy ski shops. It's a seasonal business, and we would make our offer for their current inventory minus 15% because it would always be at the end of the season, and they would have extra larges left, let's say, in jackets or smalls or something. So the inventory isn't ideal. So we would just make that offer, and then for their real estate, they would have it appraised. We would have it appraised. We would meet in the middle. Well, many of those times, the owner would come back and say, "Well, yeah, but I've been a ski shop for 20 years. I've been a ski shop for 30 years. I need 400,000 for the business." And we said, "Well, we understand that. We don't want to hurt your feelings, but this is what our offer is." And they would come back and, "Well, okay, we're not selling it to you." I said, "Well, that's fine. But then a year later, they'd call back and say, "Well, instead of 400,000, we'll take 200." They go, "Well, no, no, our formula is the same." So that's how that unfolded on the ski side. On the chemical side, we would approach that where we would want to break even in buying their equipment, let's say their trucks, and we would want to break even after 3 years. So we would say, okay, that volume of business is going to generate X amount of income a year. We'll multiply that times three, and that's what we would offer for their business. Oftentimes they would want a 6 times or an 8 times, and we would just say, "Oh, sorry." But as years would go by, then they would come down to what we would be offering.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Now, I do believe in the power of making God your salesperson, as you describe it, the lead salesperson in your book. That first acquisition, I'm sure, was pretty scary. It's kind of hard sometimes to say, "Hey, we should do this," because maybe it's something that you'd never done before. How much time would you say you prayed about it, or tell me a little bit about the conviction you felt like, yeah, this was for something that God was
Yeah.
saying to do that, or maybe in other decisions? How do you
You
hear
know,
God's voice?
none of those acquisitions we planned on. So it would start with an email or a phone call from this person, and then so I would just, well, okay, Lord, what do you want us to be doing here?
Mhm.
Because we hadn't planned this, so let's figure out what you want us to be offering. Um, that first ski shop acquisition, that was kind of okay. How do we do this? And in any acquisition, you offer low, and then you can work your way up to what your goal is. And on the chemical side, it was the same thing. People would have, it's a negotiation. So, you start low and then we didn't just come right out and say, this is our offer. We would say, go up to, then work up to our 3-year break even. But people would ask me, well, what's your 3-year plan? Or what's your 5-year plan? And years ago, I would have a 3-year plan. And I quickly just kind of, well, it sounds irresponsible, I guess, business wise, but the Lord kept changing our 3-year plan by these acquisitions. So I just, okay, Lord, just tell me what you want us to do. So Certainly would be asking the Lord through prayer, just direct us on what you want us to be doing. That's real key. Um, Meeting with some other Christian business friends of mine, bouncing these ideas off of them, getting counsel that way is helpful. Sometimes you know what to be doing, but just by meeting over coffee and what do you think helps solidify what to do. So prayer and asking for other help from guidance from Christian guys.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's really what stewardship is about, right? That, I mean, sometimes we feel like we have to arbitrarily create something, but when we look at our business as God's business, as you talk about, He's the one that has the plan.
Yeah,
He directs our steps. And James 1:5 reminds us that if we lack wisdom, we can ask Him for it.
that's right.
Our
Right.
employees ask us as business owners, should we do this or should we do that?
Yeah.
And God, it says in James 1:5, He'll give us wisdom generously. He wants to give it to us if we just ask. And so I
I,
love that humility
I
that
I just think that's an untapped thing, perhaps for a lot of people. Don't push that wisdom button that the Lord so offers to us. You
you,
just ask Him. So that's what I would do. I would just ask Him.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So when you talk about God as your chief salesperson, can you unpack that a little bit? Because I love that image that you described in the book, and obviously you believe that He brought the acquisitions to you, but can you tell a little bit more about what does that look like in the practical day-to-day operations of Buckman's?
Well, in when you get into the nitty gritty of the day to day and the customer to customer, um, you know, God would just give us the acquisition, but then we get to unpack that as to the details. So our team, they never are really sure what Jeff's going to bring to a meeting because of how these acquisitions have taken place. So God would provide the acquisitions, and then as a team, we would unpack and get into the details of how to service those customers, adding additional staff in the home office or additional employees to be able to handle
Excellent. So, you talk about in the book, I love the title of your book, Making Your Business God's Business. How did you come up with that title? And if I was a new Christian CEO or if I've been in business, how would you describe making my business God's business?
Sure. Well, I think very easily we get to take ownership of our business and think it's our business, just because of all the time, effort, and energy you put into it. But when you stand back and you realize that it really is God's business, and He blesses it, provides the income, then we can distribute that income back to His work. So that's the main reason we would look to expand the business. The title of the business, we came up with about, I don't know, 20 or 30 titles, and then would cross certain ones off. And it was probably a month or maybe 6 week process to come up with the title. But it was actually on a ski trip, another ski trip that seemed to be okay. We're going to run with that, and that's the title that we ran with because it's simple. It's His business.
I love it. I love it. Now, you talk quite a bit in the book, and we do want to unpack a lot about what I call kingdom impact.
Mhm.
So, you know, having, I believe that God gives us our businesses and our gifts and our talents. Ephesians 2:10 says that we're God's workmanship. We've been created to do good works that God's prepared in advance. And I believe that He does it so that we can do great things, but we also have the opportunity to have a kingdom impact while we go about those works that God's given to us. And you really epitomize that through what you've done at Buckman's. You have a deep desire to support missionary organizations and to support missionaries. I know that you have several programs, and we can unpack some of those that you take things that happen at Buckman's and such as ministry miles and
Mhm.
give those to missionaries so that they can support those causes. Tell me a little bit about that missionary drive that you have, and how did you learn to integrate your business and the ministry? Because a lot of times, unfortunately, we like to, we're Christians, but we're Christians in a business, but we don't necessarily know how to integrate our faith into our businesses.
Sure. Well, back in the 90s, just started to get interested in how to help missionaries. And every time there was a missionary that would come to our local church, we would offer to house them, or maybe it's a missions conference. We would have missionaries stay with us and just get to know them and spend time with them. And then we started hosting mission trips where, again, through our local church, we put out to the missionaries that our church supports if they need help doing a construction project or a vacation Bible school. We'll take a group there and do that with them. So we've done a little over 30 missions trips over the years, and you really get to know the missionary then that way. So we keep up with the missionaries through their monthly or every other month newsletter, and we look for projects that they are looking for support on. So anything from church property to church buildings or new roofs, computers, buses, you name it. There's all kinds of needs out there for funds. So then we pray about how can we help, and then we give towards those projects. So as a company, we give towards mission projects. We really don't haven't felt led to give to monthly support for missionaries, although if a company is led to do that, that's certainly fine. But we just look for projects to give towards, and we've gotten to know the missionaries, and that way we can help them on their projects, and we know where the funds are going.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And I loved your statement that you made just a minute ago talking about that ministry aspect. You said, as we've looked to growth, part of the reason for our growth, or maybe the main reason for our growth, is so that we can help more missionaries or help more
Good.
missionary projects.
Yeah.
Is that something that everybody in the team understands, or is that do you promote that when you say, hey, we're going to make this acquisition or we're going to grow in this area and then we're going to be able to help this missionary project?
Yeah, I think most of our employees, I can't say that all of them do, but certainly the core leadership team here knows that's our driving goal for Buckmans Inc. As we're giving towards those different projects. Yeah.
Excellent. And that's even personal. I know in the book you talked about the idea of, I love this concept of ministry miles. And so you talked about the idea of, and again, your authenticity from a small business owner in your book is just so fantastic. You were talking about cash flow and needing cash flow. And so that led you to think about how to have credit and credit cards and so on and so forth. But that led you down a track of saying, hey, we could use those redemption points and we could just give those to missionaries or missionaries' causes. Was that pretty accurate on the kind of the step by step process of how you came about?
Well, our pastor nicknamed them ministry miles, but we started using credit cards to pay for invoices of inventory, and that fiscally sounds irresponsible as I say that, but as I explain it, it'll sound a little better. But we pay for the inventory on credit cards, make sure that we pay the credit cards off every month, of course.
Mhm.
But then we rack up the flyer miles, and then we offer the flyer miles to missionaries and pastors. And we now do about $8 million, I think, a year on credit card purchases, and we're able to do 250 to 300 airline tickets. So we're able to fly missionaries home when their parents are ill, or college students when they're attending college here in the States, but they can go back home on the mission field for Christmas, where it just wouldn't make sense for them to spend, a couple $1,000s for an airline ticket. But when you meet with the parents, when they can get their family together over the holidays, it just means the world to them. I've had couples just crying as they're saying, "Hey, thanks for getting our son or daughter back for those 3 weeks over the Christmas break," or we wouldn't have had the money to come visit our parents that were ailing, but we able to get those tickets for them, or just pastors to go away on vacation. They don't necessarily have the funds to do that, but when you can provide them with an airline ticket. So I'm a little bit of a travel agent. Most of the time, I'm the one that does that, but it's kind of a fun part of my day to be able to do that. So yeah, ministry miles, flying pastors and missionaries around. It's pretty cool.
I love it. And again, it's a real practical aspect of what we do in business and how we do business.
Yeah, the credit card companies offer it, so we might as well kind of play that game.
Right, and it's taking a benefit. And I mean, again, we both believe in being fiscally responsible, um, running. And obviously, you've been in business now, what, 40 or 50 years?
50 years. Yeah,
50
50
years.
years. Yeah.
And so you wouldn't be successful in business had you not managed your finances well. So we believe in that. But using that as a benefit is a smart way to have a kingdom impact, is what I
Sure,
would think, right? And
sure.
so that's fantastic. So tell me a little bit about, I know, when you've been in business for a long time, running a business is harder. I always tell people it's harder than people think it is. And sometimes it takes longer than what, to build the kind of business that is a good business. It takes longer than what people think. How have you stayed excited about Buckmans and ministry over the last 50 years that you've been in business? Has it been this kingdom impact aspect, or what really drives Jeff?
Yeah, yeah. What gets you out of bed every day, kind of thing. Well, I like the idea of doing new things. So
Mm.
whether it is a new acquisition, then once you acquire that company, setting up the systems to handle that, whether it's more employees or more equipment. So on the company side, that's what drives me. But probably 10% to 20% of my day is ministry things. So whether it's connecting with a missionary that wants to chat and talk about how to apply some business principles to what they're doing on the ministry, on the mission field, or whether it's getting those airline tickets, or I'm also on the board of a mission agency, Biblical Ministries Worldwide. So have some Zoom calls related to that, or but it's all missionary or ministry related. Um, I enjoy both sides of things. So any given day, I can have my day planned out, but then a phone call or an email changes that day. I kind of, well, okay, Lord, you didn't want me to be doing that right now. I'll do this right now. Uh, Handling it that way. But it's that change. It's those different topics that makes it fun for me.
Yeah, you talked about in the book, which I greatly appreciate, again, very authentically, about there was a real pivot when you kind of moved from doing everything yourself to beginning to build a team around you and learning how to let go of some of that in
Yeah,
that perspective. So maybe you could have those opportunities to talk to a missionary if they called. Can you, if you remember back, I know you describe it in the book a little bit, but can you tell us a little bit about that shift and how
sure.
critical that was to Buckman's growth and success and your personal satisfaction?
Yeah, yeah, it was a pivotal time. I used to think I had to be involved in everything. So I would be in extremely early. I'd be working very late, and then when I read a simple book called The One Minute Manager, um, it's a very easy read, but very helpful to me. And I realized that if I delegated things to other people, then it would give me more time to do other things. So that was key for me. And you have the phrases, we've all heard them, delegate or die and things like that. But my family jokes around, but on my tombstone, it'll be chief delegator or something. But yeah, I definitely learned to delegate years ago. It was very key.
I love it. I tell leaders all the time, and I think that's part of stewardship, by the way. Sometimes we think uh, we have in business to be responsible for everything, and I think God reminds us over and over again that stewardship means that we're responsible for some things, but He's responsible for all things because He's
Yep,
the owner of it,
exactly right.
right? And so we just have to do what He's asked us to do in that obedience. But um, and I know it's hard sometimes to let things go because
Oh,
we have
sure.
that. that sense of responsibility. But I tell them, no great leader ever let alone. And the very first thing Jesus ever did was he called a team around him,
Yep.
right, which was the disciples.
Well,
You
I
talk.
found,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just found once I delegated it to someone else, oftentimes the project got done better than what I did it because they were spending more time on it. I was just kind of hitting something very quickly to get it out of the way.
That's right. That's right. And you talk about in the book how proud you are of your team and how good a team that you've developed. One of the principles I talk about is improve your organization through improving your team. Obviously, right now in the marketplace, there's a shortage of good employees, or there's a big shift. There's being called the
Sure.
Great Resignation. 40% of people are moving jobs or leaving the workforce. Uh, you've been in business for 50 years. There's been a lot of pivots that have happened in the marketplace in that time. How do you find good employees, and what do you do to keep them?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is something very much on all business owners' minds right now. So you try to be creative. Ask the Lord for that wisdom.
Mm,
Um, we have tried to, well, number one, treat our employees well. So when it comes to paying our employees, we try to be on the upper end of what that job would pay. Um, and then generally caring when an employee has a heartache or they're going through a troubled time and doing whatever we can to encourage them, whether it's sending meals or flowers or whatever it might be to encourage them. Um, Whether it's chatting with them if they're going through a tough time, just having coffee and sitting down and going over what how are they doing, kind of a thing. So that would be one area that comes to mind, and then trying to create an atmosphere that is an enjoyable place to work. So, like in the office here, when it gets over 90 degrees, it's great for our business, the summertime business. So we stock all of the freezers on the property with ice cream, and it's all you can eat.
mm,
Or in the wintertime, it's great for our business when it snows. So when we have a snowstorm go through, we have those portable s'more makers that we make s'mores here in the office and just celebrate s'mores or celebrate the snow with the s'mores. Um, this past summer, we had a food truck come in once a month and just bought lunch for everybody and just things like that. Try to make it an enjoyable place to work.
I love, again, very practical steps, but yet it's really practicing that idea that you really care about your team. You're thinking about them.
Yeah.
You're taking time to pause and make it very individualized, whether it's they're going through an issue or a problem. And that's the kind of thing that they can't find. An employee won't be able to find someplace else necessarily. They might get a few dollars more in their paycheck, but they're not going to find always a caring company or a caring leader or a fun environment where people are taking time out to make decisions based on what they think their employees might enjoy. So it seems so simple, but yet it's so profound, and it's obviously worked for you for 50 years. So
Yeah,
congratulations.
yeah, it's not anything that you can sit back and stop doing that. You have to keep thinking of things because, particularly with the current environment we're in, pay raise after pay raise after pay raise, it seems like, and trying to find one thing after another. We're trying something even when we're recording this, it's a week before Labor Day. So our summer season is starting to end. So we have an ice cream truck coming in on Wednesday. So the folks are all talking about the ice cream truck coming Wednesday, but it's all the ice cream they can eat on Wednesday to celebrate summer ending.
Right, I might find my way up to
There you
Buckman.
go. There you go.
Come have some ice cream. But I mean, it's simple, but like we said, and it's. I think the secret to what you're talking about is the heart behind it and the consistency. Right, it's
Yeah.
not a one-time event. It's something that's built into the culture. It's something that you're doing over and over and over again, because you genuinely care about your team, and you want them to be feel loved. You want them to feel appreciated. You want them to feel cared for.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I appreciated most in your book, you talk about you made a deliberate decision at Buckman's to work at hiring only Christians. as another part of your ministry and Kingdom Impact. Um, can you tell us a little bit about that decision and how that's worked for you from a company perspective?
Sure. Yeah, when we have an opening, we try to let it be known, of course, at church, if there's anyone there that fits the need. Other employees that are believers, if we have them ask at their churches, and we just let the we can't put it out there and advertise it that way, of course, in public, but we try to hire a Christian whenever we can. And some other Christian business folks I talk to, they go the other way. We don't want to hire a believer because if it doesn't work out, then we don't know how to fire them. Well, okay, I can understand that pressure, but um, I think it has not worked out for us two times after many believing Christians that we've hired. And the two times it didn't work out was, as I look back on it, was my fault. I really hired the wrong person for the wrong position, but I was trying to help them, which isn't a bad thing. But I realized that their talents didn't fit what the opening is, but I kind of forced it. And in both times, they came to me and said, it's not really working out. I think I'm going to move on. So, so the Lord took care of that. But Christians are great employees. They should be.
Right.
They realize that they're working and they're working for the Lord, not really for us as a company. So it's been a blessing for us, really.
Well, and I think one of the benefits, I mean, I could have a lot of conversations on this, but I know that a lot of times, again, sometimes this is where courage and boldness comes in for us as Christian leaders and seeing ourselves as stewards. But, when we understand the faith perspective of the people that God's put under our care, I think that's a first step.
Mhm.
And so I believe it's part of our responsibility as business owners and CEOs to know in a general sense, whether a person is a Christian or not, that and they've been brought under our care. And if they're not a Christian, I think it's our responsibility to be intentional, not force our faith, but as an intentional to be ready to share the hope that lies
Right.
within us.
Yeah,
If they're a
absolutely.
Christian, one of the things you talked about was the fact of being able to encourage and edify and support.
Mhm.
And as we look at our businesses from a kingdom impact perspective, uh, I think naturally we ought to have more people of faith being there because that's going to begin to permeate the culture of
That's right.
the values that we're trying to uphold and not necessarily face opposition every time we
Absolutely.
turn around. So I love that perspective. One of the resources I think you've seen that I prepared in alignment with the book that is um, 5 interview questions because I've tried to do that
Hmm.
for many years to figure out if somebody's a Christian or not, and then pray back to that where we started today's conversation. Ask God, should I hire this person or not? But I want to make sure I'm being a good steward of finding out those questions, and so we can't necessarily just ask them,
Yep.
are they a Christian or not? But we can be intentional in some of the questions that we ask that may uncover and they may begin to share with us their faith perspective.
Yep. Nope, I agree. Yeah. You can ask those pointed questions and you can tell by their answers in the interview, most times, that they're a believer.
Now, since Buckman is so firm in missionary causes and kingdom impact, do you, through the interview process, do you tell potential employees about, hey, this is what our company is about, or we're trying to make our business God's business? And do you ask them, can they support that, or how do they resonate with that? Is that one of the kind of interview processes that you guys go through, or does that come after?
Yeah, that comes after we make different comments. We have a meeting in the spring with all the employees, and we have a meeting in the fall. And there's times there where we'll mention as far um, as a company we were able to do this, or as a company we were able to do that, but not we haven't integrated that into the interview process.
Okay. Yeah, that I know I've got friends that.
It's not a bad idea.
Right. Well, I've got some friends at the Alliance for Defending Freedom, which is one of the companies that help support Christian businesses, of course. And one of the things that they've recommended for Christian business owners is to to make sure that we highlight our values, whatever those values might be, as we interview people. And it is an appropriate interview question to say, hey, our values are these. Can you support this as an employee or not?
Yeah,
And so, that's legitimate, that's fair, that's authentic
sure.
as we go through that particular process as well. So, but I love the vision of saying, hey, this is going to be a place that we're going to, work with. Obviously, we love everybody and we'll work with anybody that God brings to us, but that we have a desire to be an on fire team that is providing excellent work. And as you mentioned, Christians, we have the mandate from the Bible, of course, that whatever we do, we should work at with all our heart, and so we should be excellent workers all throughout the organization as well. Do you have any other advice on equipping and developing your team, or making that pivot for a business owner that maybe they've tried to delegate some things and it hasn't always gone as well, but they know they need to in order to be a good steward of
Well,
the business?
from a delegating standpoint, I would just encourage them to read that 1 Minute Manager.
Mm-hmm.
It's practical, it's simple, but it works.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. So tell about when you have to correct an employee, or obviously, like you've mentioned, your team has continued to grow through the years, and sometimes um, it may be a good employee, but maybe they're having a bad spell on performance, or maybe you just know, or some of your managers can see that, hey, this particular person really could perform at a higher level. Can you unpack for me, how do you help people reach their peak performance, or what is the model at Buckmans that you use to grow a better team?
Yeah, so we'll meet with folks that aren't performing properly and review with them how they should be improving. And then after we maybe 2 times or maybe even the third time, and they just haven't improved, we know in our hearts that we have to let them go, that they're just not getting it. Um, but those are some of the tougher times. Even though the employee has caused the problem, they haven't improved or they haven't done what they should be doing. When it comes to firing someone, that just doesn't. I'm not made that way to fire somebody, so it's always hard when I know I have to. Um, but hey, you have to do that sometimes, and I remind myself that it's not my fault, it's theirs, and we've given them every opportunity. So it's not that we are a firing machine, but when we do have to fire someone, it's not easy, but we get the job done, so to speak.
Right. Well, I think it's a matter of stewardship again.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that was a big aha for me in business. You talked about delegating and releasing. Before, when I had a team, I it was always hard for me to let somebody go, even when they were underperforming. And I just wanted to give them another chance or another chance. It was probably
same thing I
the
do. Yeah,
yeah, probably the trainer in me, or the educate. I thought, well, we can make them better. We can, I've got to make them better. And I always joke about the parable of the talents, right? And if I was in that parable as the leader that went away, the first two guys I would congratulate and give raises to and promotions and tell them what a fantastic job. And then the third guy, the one talent guy, I'd probably put my arm around him and say, you disappointed me, but now I'm back in town. I bet, let me give you another 6 months,
yep, yep. That's
and you
that's
can try.
what. But it's
You can
after we
try.
give them. It's after we give them the 6 months, and they're still having. I go, okay, this is not going to
Right.
work anymore. Yeah,
Exactly. But, when we look at it from a stewardship perspective, it's not only stewardship of resources, but it's stewardship of people.
yeah,
And, they're in God's journey. And again, we do it intentionally, we do it fair, and we do it, in an appropriate, thoughtful manner because we're considering other people. But it is important at times to from that yes or no and
yeah,
stewardship perspective to say, hey, this isn't working, and God has probably got something else in store for them.
yeah.
And I think it's a test of obedience on our part
I
to
agree.
in that
I agree.
direction. So I love your model of just meeting with them, talking to it about it, giving them a couple chances, but then setting that clear boundary moving
Yeah.
forward. Now, one of the things you talked about in the book was, again, with that team that enabled you, or as you continued to grow and you're continuing to grow, is to dedicate some time to making sure you were home on time and going on missionary trips and supporting missionaries and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that balanced approach, and how do you get business to stop? Because I know that sometimes business will take everything. You'll give it and still want more.
Sure.
How do you stop the business from overtaking you?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So my day is pretty much 8:30 or 9 o'clock until five, maybe 5:15. I'm always home at 5:30. I'm only 15 minutes away, so that's nice. But I make sure I'm home for dinner at 5:30, and my wife Nancy can depend on that. Um, I think that there's times when you have to, on purpose, put it aside. um, it's harder and harder, with technology. You're drawn to, well, if I can just get 5 emails out of the way, even though it's 9 o'clock at night, it'll make tomorrow easier. There's times when you just have to say, you know what, I'm not even going to look. I'm not even going to check, and just wait till the next day. I'll clear emails in the morning before I come to the office, just to see what might be urgent. But I try to keep it to that, leaving the house at 8 and getting home at 5:30. I do work on Saturday mornings until noon. I have a lunch date with Nancy every Saturday, make sure I'm home for at noon, but I'll get a lot accomplished on a Saturday morning. There's no interruptions. I can plow through the day, but I guess the advice there would be on purpose, not checking messages, not checking emails at certain times in the evenings, or on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday. Just they'll be there the next day.
I love it. I love it. That's part of that boundaries approach that we've been talking about, and making sure that um,
But it's hard to do.
yeah. Well, I think it's right. It's the temptation. I think that's that responsibility piece of us again. But
Yeah,
you know, I always tell people and remind business leaders that God didn't give us this business as a punishment, right? He gave it to us as a platform,
yeah,
and to that end, we have to learn when to say no to the business so we can say yes to those other things that are in our life
yeah.
that are important, right? And I love that perspective. Now, how long have you been married?
45 years this year.
45 years. Congratulations. So
Yeah.
I always ask this question when I find a successful couple. What's the secret to success? How have you and Nancy
Uh,
been married for so long?
I guess there's no, we just high school sweethearts, and we've enjoyed life journey together. And actually, Nancy's been an important part just from the business side. We talk about different business topics at dinner, and she
Mm,
gives her advice and input. And she covers a lot of things at home that I don't have to worry about. So that gives me those Saturday mornings, so to speak, or other times to be able to get things accomplished and done. So, but yeah, God's just blessed us with the love for each other.
So what I'm hearing and what I was really driving at, I love it, Jeff. That's congratulations. That's fantastic. But doing it God's way, you can have a growing and successful business. Your business can last 40 years and be passed on. You're getting ready to pass it on to the third generation, to your
Yeah,
son, and you can have a successful marriage relationship. That that kind of seems like an impossibility today, and yet God's plans and God's ways really work. So I just love the example that you've set related to those things.
yeah. Yep. God's laid it all out in the Bible for us, so we just have to follow it.
I tell people all the time, right, that sometimes we challenge that and we think we have a better plan, but everything as I look back over the landscape of my life, what I found was the biggest regrets and mistakes that I made in life and in business was when I did it my way,
Yeah.
right? And when I did it God's way,
Yeah.
amazingly, it worked out.
Right. That's right. Yeah. It shouldn't amaze us, but it does. We're all human. We all make that mistake.
Now, in the last few questions, I do want to get real practical because I want to remind people about your book and the challenge that you have. I mean, the challenge is right on the cover of the book, making your business God's business. Um, you're in the Philadelphia and you're obviously you're the one of the premier companies on the entire East Coast for both pools, pool supplies, and chemicals, and obviously the snow business as well. You've been pretty adamant about your faith and letting people know what you are, and you put it in on paper and put it in a book form. Have you faced any criticisms, or has any of your customers come to you and say, "Hey, I really don't like what you're doing with the business," or "I don't want you to be about God in your business"? Can you tell me about that journey? Has that ever happened to
Yeah,
you?
we haven't had any backlash from that really. I have some customers that compliment us on the missions trips that we go on. Years ago, this was maybe the mid 80s or early 80s. We had customers complaining that we were not open on Sunday for the ski shop, and we battled that with a sign where we post on the door saying, "Allow us to serve you 6 days a week, but on Sunday, it's a family day. It's a day to spend time going to church and with your family, and allow us to serve you 6 days a week." So, and that seems to have worked. So we've actually gotten more compliments on that, but we haven't had any criticism since those early years of the 80s.
Well, I love that. And the reason I bring that up is because one of the things that I hear sometimes from business leaders and business owners is that, well, if I'm too much out there with my faith, or if I'm too whatever, that I might face some criticism from employees and or
Ah,
customers or whoever, right?
yeah, don't let that bother you at all. No,
Right,
no.
exactly. And I
Yeah,
say, well,
the opposite's true.
right, exactly. The opposite is true. I think people are attracted to authenticity. They're attracted to people that care about their missions. And our secular friends are very good about, hey, here's a cause that we're adamant about or something that we're going to promote. And
Yeah,
they're not really concerned whether people are supportive of that cause or not. They're dedicated to their mission because they feel like they're called to do that. And I think as Christian business owners and leaders, we should be that passionate about what God's called us to
absolutely,
be about. So,
absolutely. Yeah,
and I found it to be true. I've been working with businesses now for the last 20 years or so, and they've been very adamant about their faith, and very few criticisms, if any, ever has taken place because a person is living out their faith in the marketplace.
yeah, I
So
agree.
I love that. Um, One of the things that you talked about too in the book was, and you mentioned it earlier in our conversation about you really pivoted on the pool side to sell some chemicals that weren't necessarily readily available. And it was a little bit of a risk that you had to take, but yet you saw it and you took it because you knew it was meeting the needs of your customer. So,
Mhm.
can you tell me a little bit about that? When you have to take a risk in your business, whether it's a business or just a pure business decision, or maybe it's where you feel like God's asking you to do something, maybe buying the land.
Mhm.
Um, uh, Tell me how do you, what encouragement could you give to other business owners to maybe take some risks where maybe they don't necessarily, maybe they're a little afraid to do that.
Sure. It really goes back, we chatted about it a little earlier, but asking the Lord for his direction, that his wisdom that he promises to give us, and asking him. And then working through the details, how long is it going to take to pay this back, or how long is it going to take to break even? And if it's a matter of buying a property, comparing it perhaps to what you're paying in rent now, is it a better location? Will your sales go up? But God wants you to be honest with yourself too. Don't explode those sales to be something unrealistic to just justify buying that property, but asking the God of the universe for wisdom. There's nothing better than that. He'll give it. He promises us. He'll give it to us.
I love it. I love it. That's very good. Well, I think right now is the time. I mean, we want to be, smart and savvy and strategic, but as we, are in the world today, we know the importance of. I think God prepared us. I tell business owners over the last 18 months or so, as we've been dealing with COVID and all the changes that have been happening in the marketplace, that God prepared us for such a time as this to be in the
Oh, sure.
marketplace at this moment.
That's right. Oh, yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it's a time for prayer and a time for to hear His voice about what He would have us to do. And I think there's a great opportunity for us that lies ahead of us
Yeah,
if we're willing to take some of those
sure.
risks. Um, what would you and again, I do want to recommend they can pick up the book on Amazon. Do you can they pick it up also at your stores, or where else can they get a copy of your book?
Amazon's the best place. Yep.
Mhm.
Just on Amazon.
Excellent. Um, so, if you were besides getting the book and starting it, what else would you recommend to a business, a Christian business owner? What first steps would you give to them about making their business God's business?
Just asking the Lord how they could serve Him through their business, whether it is supporting a missionary or helping at a project at their local church or a missions project, or whether it is using their products or their services for the Lord. Maybe if there's something they can do for a missionary that their business does, or whether they could do something for a church or their pastor. Just how can they, asking the Lord, how can they use their business for the Lord would be key.
Yeah, I love that question, right? I mean, again, it's a foundational piece that, hey, God, you've given me this business, you've given me these resources and these people, and I believe that you've done that with a purpose. There's an intentionality behind what you've done.
We
And that,
take some of the pool chemicals and we offer them at no charge to Christian camps that have swimming pools. And we didn't start off offering them for free. We started off, offering them at a discount and then at cost and then, below cost. And as we could afford it, then we just said, hey, let's just offer it for free. And um, that's just an idea, that they take their services and their products and offer.
yeah, I think there's so many opportunities to make our businesses God's business.
Yeah,
But it does start with that question, right? Lord, would you have me to do in this particular moment? And finding that purpose behind it. One of the principles I write about in the book is I call it profit with a purpose.
yeah,
And I think that businesses should be profitable. We should strive for profitability, and
sure.
profitability is a good thing. But when we have profit with a purpose, when we find what God's designed for us to do by asking Him that question, God, how do you want me to use this business? Not just all the revenue, but how do you want me to use this business as a platform for your kingdom or to have kingdom impact? Man, it can inspire us, it can motivate us, it
It's
can change
exciting.
us.
Yeah.
It puts us on a journey, and I think it's on a journey to hear well done. So, hey, Jeff, well done. I'm so impressed by Buckman's Inc. and what you've accomplished. I look forward to the next 40 years of your business. I think you guys have a great vision and plan, and I know you're going to continue to spread all throughout the United States. You're primarily on the East Coast now, but I look forward. I think God, as I've been continuing to pray for your business, I think God has great vision for you and for future generations. And so it's been built on a solid foundation. The work that you've done is just outstanding. So thank you for your commitment to making your business God's business.
Oh, thank you, and just for the opportunity to share. And we just praise the Lord for what He allows us to do.
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
All right. Thank you.